So we're going to be rolling into all the content today for boundaries in the workplace. And my name is Jen Roscoe. I'm a counselor with the Montana Public Health Training Center under the Wellness Program. And just want to say thank you so much, first and foremost, to Desiree, who is my number one person here that's going to be helping out with all things technology. Thank you so much, Desiree.
You are welcome, of course.
Awesome. Yay.
So I'm ready when you're ready.
Okay, great. Well, let's go to the first slide and people will just keep coming in. And today we're going to start with looking into boundaries and what they look like in the workplace. We're going to go into all the different types of boundaries. And since I'm a psychotherapist, I think it's important for us to touch in a little bit on understanding where our unconscious drives come from within our values and our emotions. And then we're going to skim over just the power of words and speech. And I'm going to go into a lot of skills and a lot of tools. And notice also, what are the benefits of boundaries, especially in the workplace? And I have a bunch of resources at the end if you want to learn more. So if you're just tuning in, thank you so much for arriving. We're going to jump right into the next slide. Thanks, Desiree.
You're welcome.
Okay, so just what the heck are boundaries anyway? We know that boundaries are defined by the limits and the rules that we set for ourselves within relationships. They're really this place in between you and another person and ensuring that there is appropriate separation, independence, but also support for each person in the relationship. And so a boundary, it's really about limiting and defining, in relation to something or someone else. And boundaries, they can really be physical, mental, emotional, tangible, or even intangible. And the really cool thing about boundaries is that they help us preserve our physical, our emotional energy and live our lives to the standards that we want. So let's go into a little bit of emotional intelligence in the next slide, if that's right, Desiree. So we know that our emotional intelligence is working all the time. And about 60 to 70% of our communication is actually nonverbal. And so this provides us with information. It also helps us regulate our interactions, and this can really define our relationships. So you may notice, a lot of different ways that we use our emotional intelligence and how we communicate, and also how other people communicate with us. So yeah, let's go to the next slide there, Desiree. So boundaries. There's a lot of different types of boundaries, and I just wanted to touch in on one of my favorite theorists within counseling is Salvador Minkin. He's the founder of structural family therapy, and he split boundaries into three different types. There's rigid, healthy, and porous. And, rigid boundaries, this is often people that avoid intimacy or closeness with others. They often have just a few close relationships and friends, but they can sometimes seem detached or even cold, and maybe even struggle to open up to people. So these folks that have rigid boundaries, they tend to be pretty private. For porous boundaries, kind of some examples of folks that do this, they really struggle to say no to other people's requests. They can struggle with being dependent on other people's opinions, and also, seek reassurance from others mostly. And healthy boundaries, these are really boundaries that are they're healthy. They are those folks that are, trying to know their personal needs and values. They're able to communicate these needs to others. They can be assertive when they need to. They can say no to others. They can also share personal information appropriately, not oversharing. And they are not willing to accept any abuse from others. So let's move on to some other types of boundaries, more specifically in the workplace. Okay, so here's some just kind of common boundaries that we have in the workplace. And these are helpful to just kind of clue into and notice, some examples of physical boundaries are, not wanting to shake someone's hand rather than hugging them. That can be a personal boundary in the workplace with physical. Also, wearing headphones or just signaling that you're busy, that can be a boundary. Going solo during a lunch break, that could be a physical boundary that you might need some time for yourself. And also, specifically how long someone can borrow an item from you. That can also be a physical boundary. For mental boundaries in the workplace, some examples include setting hours for when you work, advising management on strategies for more efficient meetings, not gossiping with colleagues at work can be a mental boundary, and also setting up messages with like instant messaging to alert the others that you're focusing right now. Some emotional boundaries include examples of avoiding engaging with someone if they're in a really bad mood. That can be an emotional boundary for yourself. Delegating work to others appropriately. And even just talking to your manager about, how you prefer to receive feedback, or even not participating in doubling down on other people's negative feelings. So these are just a few examples of boundaries like within the workplace. But let's focus in now on like, what are the benefits of this? Before we get into tools, yeah, it's cool to kind of activate what is good about this? How is this gonna help you? And notice that it's really important to set these boundaries at work and in order to maintain like a really good work-life balance. And this just raises how you feel inside. So setting boundaries at work, it can raise productivity and it just allows you to be more productive and you can focus in on your own tasks, avoiding workplace distractions. For lowering work stress, it can really help in lowering and manage workplace issues by really establishing limits. And so a common boundary that professionals set by only accepting reasonable amount of work at the time. And this really helps you to focus on your job and your responsibilities and work, like a fair amount of hours. So since this reduces the risk of burnout, this can really help with, less burnout. And we're seeing this kind of across the board in a lot of different job placings. So an example of setting for others is, professionals are often able to set this example for other employees, which will lead to a happier and also healthier work culture. So this kind of brings up the concept of emotions and just how they unconsciously inform our behavior. A lot of us have a lot of us react on default. And so it's helpful to kind of understand our own internal landscape. And so I'd like to go into a tool that's really helpful in understanding yourself. So let's go to the next slide, Desiree. Okay, so recognizing emotions. In order to really set your boundaries, it's really important to notice and recognize what your emotions are and to understand what causes them. So in some cases, you might need to work through maybe a personal issue to find out what's the underlying issue there. and that's helpful to do with therapy or with a counselor. But really trying to develop your emotional intelligence is a great way to recognize and learn how to manage them at work first. So notice that we have this really cool system set up within our bodies, and our emotions inform us about what we like. So your emotions, they're in your body, and they're somatic, so you can find them within your system. And we can actually tell the truth um, before even thinking the truth. We can actually feel it in our body. And a lot of us, we really avoid feelings and write them off, but our feelings are actually our indicators every day for what our understanding of what our preferences are. So one thing I always like to kind of point out with my clients as a therapist is, as a baby, you fine-tuned this muscle. In order for you to get fed or even to get your needs met, you had to learn this from the moment you took your first breath. So one of the hard things is that a lot of us unlearn how to speak up for ourselves as children in a healthy way. So a lot of kids are kind of taught not to trust how they feel. And so as parents, we often say to our kids, and I did this for sure with my kids, they would fall down and I would say, "Oh, you're fine." And instead of saying, "Oh, that looked like that hurt," and just kind of sitting with it and being a little witness to what happened. This is often what happens because, we're just busy. We need to get to the next thing. And so being there to be present with kids really takes another gear. So the problem with constantly, yeah.
There's a question in the chat. So do you want me to read it to you? Or do you want to wait a bit?
When I'm done with this slide, can I check into it? Okay, nice. And so the problem with us is the problem with denying kids their feelings is that they kind of learn up to kind of stuff their feelings. And this is also a learned way of being for people pleasing, for avoiding conflict, and for not learning how to trust themselves, because we've been told over and over again not to tune in to our own inner guidance by understanding our own values. So we're going to go into values in just a sec, but let's check in with the chat. And sorry, I can't see the chat because I'm in this other mode, but let's go ahead and let me open it up so I can see.
Can you say more about feeling truth in your body?
Oh, I love that question. All right, well, let's do it right now. So if you just take a moment, close your eyes and just take a deep breath in. Now with your next breath, breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. All right, and just notice how you're feeling right now with your eyes closed, and maybe tune in to yourself sitting on the chair, noticing where you are, and just notice how you're feeling inside. And so if you can locate a feeling within your system, try to find it like where it is in your body. So for me, I'm feeling a little bit anxious and nervous because I'm presenting. So I can find that really easy. It's like right in my chest area. I'm feeling just a little bit right here, but I'm also feeling pretty excited and stoked to share all this information. So I can find that feeling of excitement and within my face. So just take a moment to feel in and find what is the truth of the emotion that you're feeling and where is it in your body. And this is a really cool tool to do throughout the day and just check in, especially if you've had something dysregulating happen during the day. Taking a moment to just ground yourself in the place that you are, allowing the floor to meet up with your feet, allowing the chair to meet up where you're sitting, and just breathing. And then notice, gosh, what am I feeling right now? Any other questions? I can't actually see the question thing, Desiree, so we're good? Okay, thank you for that question. All right, so let's keep rolling. We're going to move on to one of my favorite tools in understanding yourself. And this is a video I developed for our training center. And so let's go ahead and just let this rip, Desiree. And I'm going to mute myself. I think if we both mute ourselves, we can hear ourselves better. Oh, and I don't know, Desiree, if you push share sound when you
Okay.
started.
I did not. I do not know
Okay.
where do I share that at?
Might not be able to do this one then. Okay, let's go to the next, and I can just talk through this. We don't need to see the video. I'll put the video in the chat at the end. If we don't push share, then we can't hear it. So go ahead and go to the next slide.
Sorry.
Okay, no worries. Next slide. Here we go. Yep, here we are. Okay, so this is such a cool tool. This is a values exercise. And so the cool thing about understanding what our drives and our priorities in our life is figuring out what our values are. And so just take a moment and check out this list and notice maybe 5 to 6 that really pop out at you. And so these aren't things that are like goals. These are like things that are in your bones. This is like, yeah, adventure. That's like something I love. It's something I desire in my life. And maybe write them down. And once you have them written down, take a moment to maybe number them from the top priority, like this one's really important, down to the one that's a little bit the least important. So the cool thing about understanding our values is once you understand what they are, you'll notice that a lot of the times, if you're triggered or if you're in a situation that's dysregulating, we usually can thread that value to how we're feeling in our body. And so let's say, for instance, you're a nurse. And you may notice that, yeah, you might have circled caregiving. That's like one of your top values. And that is so cool because, hey, you're getting paid to do that value. And you may notice, I am really living this value. And I'm really on the far end of the stick of like really giving out a lot. You might be giving out with at home, you might be in your community doing caregiving, you might just like really doing that extra bit of caregiving. So sometimes we can notice that we've pushed our boundaries too far within a value if we're like exhausted. So that's another indicator within your emotions that like, I'm actually starting to get really resentful at work. I'm starting to feel really angry. I feel like I'm doing too much. And so this can be a really good indicator that that value that you have is moving more into like compassion fatigue or just taking on that secondary trauma within your system. And so, yeah, this is a really cool exercise. And I really like encouraging people to do this with their family. It's so nice to know what your partner's values are. And it's really helpful too. Like my kids are grown now, they're 27 and 24, but now that I know what their values are, it makes sense to me when they do certain things. It's like, yep, that makes sense. He wants to ski that cliff because adventure is his top value. Yeah, so it's helpful to do. Okay, let's go on to the next one, Desiree. Are there any questions, Desiree? Nice. Okay. All right, here we are. We're gonna move into understanding our own truth and understanding why it's important to really tune into your own responsibility here. And so you'll notice at the top that I'm kind of go into a little bit of you statements versus I statements. Because when we move into the idea of you statements, it's usually moving into blame. And so by taking ownership of feelings, taking on that responsibility of your own actions, it helps you so much move into a healthier way of being. So when you say, oh, you made me so mad, or, you know, if you really knew me, you would know that this is important to me right now. We all do this, right? We all have said something like this. This is very, very common to be in a reactionary state and then blame someone else for our emotion. But the cool thing is, when you learn to honor that you are in charge of your own emotions, then we can move into some real empowerment. So this is about leveling up your communication and really taking ownership of your own feelings. And this completely shifts people out of the blame game. Because when we're in the blame game, we give up our power. So when we take ownership of our feelings, and then we don't blame other people for them, we're learning to really check in with our preferences, and it helps you empower yourself. So this takes a little bit of courage. It takes a little bit of bravery, because peeling back the layers to come back into connection with ourselves, it takes a little courage. So let's kind of start small. I kind of have a little experiment. All right, so let's just tune in right now about dinner tonight. What do you want for dinner? What do you want to eat? So let's say you have a partner, and you might be someone that might be more on the like a people pleaser. So the default response for someone that tends to be more of a pleaser would be something like, oh, I don't care, whatever you want to eat tonight. But this is a perfect opportunity to tune into yourself and notice, well, what do you actually want to eat? What do you want to eat tonight? And so a simple way to assess this is to kind of to tune in, notice what you want. Let's say your preference is sushi and your partner wants Italian. So then this can open up a conversation with your partner or your friend or whoever about, just noticing what you would like. So you may say, you know what? I really want sushi. But if you don't share this, I can guarantee that you're going to feel just a little bit resentful inside if you don't speak up and you really want sushi. So that's noticing, what are your desires? And again, this goes back into tuning into your system and noticing what you want. So a lot of us have ideas that, you know what, it's so much easier to stay quiet, or I don't want to start a conflict. It's just better to keep the harmony and not have an opinion. So when we do this and we avoid external conflict, we actually create more internal conflict. We actually create chaos within ourselves when we avoid the truth within ourselves. And so when we create relationships that are basically packaged for someone else, this really isn't sustainable. It takes way more energy to cover up and wear a mask rather than just tell the truth within yourself. And so this is just one little example where if you've never think you've made a boundary before, this is like a little baby step in kind of like creating that muscle within yourself of saying, you know what, I'd really like sushi. All right, so let's move on to the next one. Desiree, any questions?
No, there are not.
Okay. Nice.
I'm supposed to hear my marbles on mute. Sorry.
No worries.
Oh, now
Okay.
there is. Hold on, there is.
Oh, there is.
Amy said she loves all of this.
Oh, thanks, Amy. Appreciate that. Okay. All right, so let's just move in to a little bit more of understanding boundaries within the workplace. And this is just very common for people that, are in and there's a lot more that you can do within the workplace, but let's just kind of jump into these real quick. So setting priorities, number one. So for this, for example, you may notice that your supervisor is really considering customer service to be the main priority of your position. And it's important that when setting boundaries, understanding that that may help you decide which boundaries and aspects you're willing to compromise on. And so let's look at delegating tasks. For delegating tasks can really help you focus in on what are the most important tasks and actually allow the daily operations of what you do to just run smoothly. So delegating, this can really help you manage a reasonable workload while still maintaining, a productive work practice. So for understanding your workload, I think it's helpful to consider how long it takes for you to complete a task, or even counting how many tasks you do complete during a workday. It might help in establishing a regular work pace and to help set expectations for your role. Taking time off. Well, we all need this, right? And I'm all about self-care. You're going to kind of hear self-care weave through this entire presentation today. Even if you don't have time paid off, it's still beneficial to plan and take breaks away from work. Even if, especially if you feel sick, it's really important to stay home and just recuperate. Just take that time to recover instead of trying to work through your sickness. Yeah, so for communicating, it's really helpful within the workplace to just develop that strong communication skill. And, with this muscle, it can really help you explain what your boundaries are and why you need them. And communication, it just can help solve all sorts of issues that are needed within boundaries, especially. So learning how to communicate with your supervisor and colleagues, it really may help you create a much healthier work environment. All right, asking for advice. So, sometimes there's other people that know more than us and they have the experience, maybe even with a similar issue, or maybe they can even sympathize with your problem. So tapping in on other professionals, even outside of your own work environment, may help you just to help gain your boundaries, and also maybe recommend some practices for you to adopt in order to maintain a better work-life balance. All right, setting limits. So you may have to set a boundary for not, bringing in personal items such as a laptop or from home in order to complete your work. I mean, just notice, what are the limits that work for you? You may even want to request from the company to provide you with some tools that you need to succeed in your position. And so sometimes this can be helpful to limit even the number of hours you work per week. And for most full-time positions, this may mean working 40 hours a week, but also for part-time, you can set the boundary, that you only work 25 hours per week. So you might be noticing, wow, I actually do boundaries all the time. So let's just go over this last one real quick, and establishing a clear schedule. And, for example, you may want to set a boundary that you're only available to check your email during work hours, or even like during specific times. And this can really allow you to focus on other tasks, and remind others about your availability as well. Okay. All right, Desiree, any
Yes.
thoughts, questions? Yes. Okay.
Kathy has shared, over the years, I have found a well-written job description to be helpful. When new projects come up, do they fit in my job description? Do they fit better with another employee?
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, definitely. Thank you. You said Kathy?
Yes,
Thanks, Kathy. Anything else?
that's it.
All right. Okay. So we're going to move on to understanding hard and soft boundaries. And this is a tool really that, boundaries, since they're limits that we really identify for ourselves, and through applying either through action or communication, we're going to focus in on like what are hard and what are soft boundaries. And some people call these non-negotiable or negotiable. Oh, and I see my slide is incorrectly. One of those is supposed to say not negotiable. So my bad there. Sorry about that. But yeah, so I'll use the word hard and soft just to be clear. Okay, so in figuring out like your hard or even your soft boundary, hard boundaries, these are your non-negotiables. And soft boundaries, these are the ones that are kind of like goals that you want to reach and you can kind of be flexy about. So knowing the difference can kind of help you make choices that are aligned with your deepest needs and also manage your energy. So as you work towards whatever your goal is. So hard boundaries, these are the ones you aren't willing to compromise on. And for example, like I would never take on a client on a Friday. Fridays are sacred to me. I don't work on Fridays unless I can avoid it because I have a ski date with my 27-year-old son and I am like that is that time for me and him and maybe he bails on me sometimes and that's okay. I get to ski by myself, but Fridays are non-negotiable for me unless it's like I have to. So a soft boundary, like an example may be you wanting to leave the office at 4:30 instead of 5:30. But for other people, like your manager, they might be involved in making that a reality. So you can decide how to take it slow and think about how you can initiate that conversation. So when you start to kind of define these hard and soft boundaries, it'll become easier for you to figure out what the non-negotiables are versus aspirations. And this really allows you to like confidently get aligned with your deepest needs and also manage your energy. So another non-negotiable is like, for me, I set my notifications from work on silent when I leave work. I am not answering the phone for work after work is over. When my workday is done, I am peacing out. And that's really important because I deal a lot with secondary trauma. And because I'm a therapist dealing with helping people move through their trauma, the rest of my day is dedicated to me filling my well back up so that I can come in the next day not depleted. And so self-care is really important to me. And in the morning, that's also bracketing time that's not negotiable. This is a hard boundary with my phone. I leave it silent. And that way I can set myself up for the day and I can be in alignment with my clients. And so think about what are your personal self-care practices that might be nice to figure out like what a hard boundary is with that. These are less about being outcome driven. These are more about focusing in on identity driven. And so this is how you want to be. And when you get into practice with it and kind of grow that muscle about what your identity is, when we do this for for the future, then we do it in the present moment. And it's really powerful because blocking time for yourself is a practice and setting boundaries and learning to say no. First, we have to find our no in order to say, be free to say yes. So what I mean by that is really, usually our yes is like a knee-jerk reaction. It's often like a reaction yes. And that knee-jerk yes, it often comes from like obligation, of wanting to be a hero, of not wanting to disappoint, and feeling responsible for everyone else, and or even being worried that you'll disappoint someone else or make someone mad. And so if that yes is from anything but desire, then it's usually a no in our systems. And we can learn how to say no with grace and also with gratitude instead of using guilt and excuses. And we're going to get into that in the next couple slides. So if a colleague comes in or a boss and says to you, hey, I really need you to do this, and I really need you to stay late. So the boundary is, ooh, I really appreciate you asking me. And if I wasn't so busy with my work, I would certainly be able to help you, but that's not the case right now. So just notice there, I kind of use a little bit of gratitude at the beginning, like, I appreciate you asking me. So you're thanking them. Yeah, thanks for thinking of me. And then I went into an I statement. And so we're going to get into this in the next slide. But yeah, just noticing that if it's for staying late, we usually acquiesce and give in to other people's needs because we think their urgency is our urgency. So again, when you take that moment to just take 3 seconds and breathe and just listen to what the other person is asking you, and then asking yourself to get into a place of alignment, then we usually don't have these knee-jerk reactions. You can always let people know, I'll get back to you on that, and take that 3 seconds or more to just calm your system so you don't move into that reactionary yes. So learning how to take a moment and take a pause and just kind of figure out what you really want to do. For a lot of people, this is a new muscle. And so you can just practice this in your everyday with small things like dinner. This is not a high stakes situation at work. When you practice at home, you know, what your preferences are and how that feels to you. It can help you just really tune into what you want. And so just notice too that, you know, a lot of our hard and soft boundaries are different than others. Like for some people, a non-negotiable would be smoking, like being around smoking. And for other people, it's not a big deal at all. So just notice that everyone has different feelings about what their boundaries are, and that's okay. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Any questions, Desiree, or comments?
No.
Okay, cool. Okay, this is one of the best tools ever. Okay, I love this tool. We're going to move into I statements. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard about I statements. But the number one reason that most people don't set boundaries is because they don't know what to say. And so we're going to kind of tune into this right now. A lot of people start with a you statement. You always, you never. And that usually, when that happens, when people say you statements, it kind of pushes that button of defensiveness in the other person. So if you can notice and start practicing maybe at home with your family or your kids or your partner or whatever, I statements, then it can come out a little bit easier in the workplace. So just noticing, I feel X when you Y or say Z. All right, so let's just hear some boundary setting statements. Thank you for inviting me. Again, here's a little gratitude. However, I already have plans. I don't feel comfortable discussing that topic with you. Again, notice as I say these where they fall into line with the emotion and with the action. I really appreciate you asking me for help. However, my schedule is already full this week. I really can't do that right now. Let me check in on someone who can help and get back to you. Let's see. How about, thank you for thinking of me, but my manager asked me to prioritize 2 other projects before I take on something new. Looks like that time doesn't work for my schedule. Could you send me an alternative slot to schedule the meeting? So you may notice, you know what? I actually do this. I actually do these things already. And so you can give yourself a little pat on the back of noticing that you're already maybe practicing ways to set boundaries and make sure that you're not getting an extra workload. And so you might now notice that you have a better idea of like what maybe your hard boundaries are, maybe a soft boundary and how to protect them. So noticing in that, for instance, you might have a high level priority that you really want to protect that energy around something, and that you're feeling really drained about this thing. So think about everything you do at your office, your tasks that make you feel important, emails, that kind of heads down work, the meetings that you have with just all kinds of different outlines at the bottom line. And you may notice that you've needed to set a hard boundary of saying no in a meeting, and that you are trying to replace those with something else after later. So just notice that those hard boundaries, sometimes we come off kind of jerky and like kind of harsh when we first try it. And so if you practice first at home, then it's a little less harsh when you get to work and try it. So practicing first with soft boundaries before you jump into hard boundaries is helpful. All right, so let's see. All right, any questions on this? Okay, we're doing good on time, so I'm gonna keep going. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so the coolest thing about boundaries is that this can really lead to some really awesome like self-discovery and empowerment. So adding that courage muscle along with your confidence muscle, a lot of people, they associate boundaries with abandonment. And we may not like the behavior choices of another, but noticing what a hard boundary versus a soft one, this really isn't about getting someone else to change. This is about you changing. So that's kind of the thing to notice about boundaries. This is all focused on you and your preferences. So most people think it's about trying to manhandle someone into getting something that you want them to do. Oh, I think we lost the PowerPoint, Desiree. It's coming back. I'll just keep talking. So this really isn't about you manhandling someone else. Most people think it's about getting what you want from other people. But boundaries are really about self-care, and they're really about getting clear about what works for you. So giving yourself permission first so that you're letting people know what is working for you and what's important for you, and just holding that piece, that putting your money where your mouth is and holding on to that. So we teach people how to treat us. So if it's something like I notice that this is one that might be helpful. I notice I really feel uncomfortable when we're out to dinner and you have more than 2 drinks. So in order to take care of myself, if you have more than 2 drinks, then I'm gonna leave the restaurant. So notice this is a hard boundary. I've just crossed a line here. I just put, a line in the sand, and it's strong. And so you definitely have taken, your finger across the sand. And the question is, are you gonna hold that boundary? So to say that, you got to stick by it. So that's the other part of boundaries, is sticking to it and holding it if we make that line in the sand. And once you start practicing holding the boundary, you're going to notice you're going to start feeling a lot stronger. But before you go into those hard boundaries, practice soft ones first, just so you can kind of build up that muscle. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. All right. So just some final, tips that I really want to bring home. Tuning into our feelings. So our feelings, they are essential. And they are the means for getting in touch with our values, that we need to protect our own boundaries. So regularly ask yourself, how do I feel about the situation? How do I feel about this person? What is this feeling telling me? If you feel resentment or trapped or even discomfort in a situation with a person, it can really indicate that your boundaries have been crossed. So be flexible. Just like you, your boundaries, they change over time. It's okay. Be willing to alter them, and just like be willing to reflect on what an old boundary, whether or not it's still serving you. Getting specific, not vague. So vague boundaries often don't work. It's impossible to know what our boundaries have been when they've been crossed if we don't know exactly what they are. So try to get specific in what it is. You may have noticed that I've repeated a couple times about thanking people. at the beginning of a boundary, but also thanking people for like respecting your boundaries. When people respect or alter their behavior to accommodate our boundaries, wow, thank them. I mean, tell them what it really means to you. They are so much more likely to do it again if you do that. And really seek to understand and respect the boundaries of others. We've all been on the other end of a boundary. And just like you, everyone else is just trying to protect themselves and what is uniquely important to them. So make sure you take the time to just understand others around us so that we can focus in on our own values and really notice what perspective feels really insular. All right, this last one, empower yourself. This is, about instead of going to that place of blame, pointing the finger, or feeling like a victim, this just takes away all your power. And the truth is that you're the one doing it to yourself. So to get your power back, you can turn your focus in on yourself and just take ownership and self-reflect and also practice growing that muscle. Because you know what? A lot of people, most people, wait for a crisis for change. However, if you rock your foundation now, then you won't get rocked by life. Okay, so we've had some time to absorb all this information. And I'm wondering, let's go to the next slide, Desiree. Let's go one more maybe. No, let's go back. We'll come back to resources, but yeah, I want you to just take a moment to just kind of absorb new ways of protecting your time and your energy and your well-being. And so asking yourself, gosh, what did you learn today? What are a couple boundaries that if you were to set in would result in strong returns? And just notice that this is a commitment to yourself. And as you experiment with boundaries, remember that this process is fluid. The focus is to gain a deeper understanding of what you want, and also rather than just like being handled by you and your boss or your customer, or your partner, or your kids, or society at large, just when you step back and reflect and just evaluate what your desires are, you may discover that boundaries actually don't limit you at all. They give you the space to create the life that you want to live. And so here are a couple of my favorite books that I like to recommend to clients. The Set Boundaries for Peace. This is Nedra Glover. I love this book. This is really helpful. This is a little bit more academic-y. This one's small. It's kind of a pocket. Oh, sorry. I'm on. The NF Your Boundaries is a small book, and I think it's a fantastic pocketbook to just flip open and get to some really great resources. And also this one has like all these great ways of grounding yourself, because when we practice boundaries, it often activates our nervous system. And so when your nervous system kind of gets jacked a little bit, it's good to know like what are some grounding techniques and softening yourself and getting yourself back into your body. And so I really like the NFU from Your Boundaries. The Setting Boundaries Will Set You Free, Nancy Levine. This is my favorite. I love this book. And she's got a lot of cool podcasts where she talks about setting boundaries as well. She's a total expert. And I don't know, I think she has like 6 books on this subject. So I highly recommend that. And if you want a book that's like not just boundaries, but just like a great book. Oh gosh, it's not really showing. This is Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart. This one, thank you. This one has a lot of really cool information that's just great for everything. So I highly recommend this. And she has a great session on boundaries as well. All right. So, oh, someone likes it. I appreciate that. So let's just tune in. I always like to leave like the last 10 minutes to just check in and check in on like reflections or takeaways, what people are noticing, and then also get into the chat some resources for you that you can see if I can do two things at once. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. But let's just go ahead if people want to unmute themselves and come back into the room. I'd love to hear like, what's a takeaway for you today? What is something that you notice that's helpful and that you'd love to share with the group about either today's class or even something that you already do that's really helpful? And I appreciate you being brave.
Jen, I've added you as co-host so you can also see the chat. There's a few.
Holy, yeah. Oh, great. There's so many. All right. What did people learn today? What do you notice? Is there anything that's like, ooh, that's an aha moment for me?
Hi, Jen.
Hello, Ruth.
Hello. This is Ruth. I just want to thank you for your talk, and I think that my mind is really going toward like how helpful it is for other people when you have good boundaries yourself.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take that away. Thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah. So when other people have good boundaries, thanks. I didn't even go into that. So I love that you brought that into the room. When other people have good boundaries, it helps us in noticing and being aware of what's helpful for them. Wonderful. What else do people want to share?
I can share a takeaway.
Awesome. Thank you.
I really liked using the question of like, is my answer, am I saying yes from a place of desire, or is it more from obligation and pleasing? And I think I can use that as an anchor question when I am just being a yes woman. So yeah, I liked having that.
Great. Would you repeat that again? It sounds like you wrote it down.
Yeah. Using the question, am I saying yes or answering this from a place of desire or more of a place from obligation and pleasing? I think that can be a really good anchor question for recognizing if I'm doing it, yeah, because I want to or because I'm being a yes woman.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, because we want to please our coworkers and be a team player and all that stuff, but noticing, is this yes from a desire? Or is it more from a place of wanting to please and noticing what the feeling, what the difference is at within your system. So thank you so much, E. Harris. Thank you. All right. What else? What else did people notice during the talk or even want to share that's been helpful for them in the past? I might check the chat and just read some of these out. And so I'm noticing that Melanie says, what do we do if we already have compassion fatigue and need to open up and lower our boundaries again? Oh, such a good question. Yeah, already experiencing that like secondary trauma, that compassion fatigue where you're tired. And you know, you need to open and close your boundaries throughout the day. And so this is one of those things about tapping into self-care throughout the day, So my recommendation is notice how you can bracket in self-care throughout your day, and like also bring in the senses. So what are our five senses? Okay, so we got taste. All right, what's a self-care you can bring into your day that you can have at work that's just this sweet little thing. Maybe it's a piece of chocolate, maybe it's like this coffee break, maybe it's tea. Like, all right, about sound. What is like a sound thing for you within your senses that really brings in some self-care? Some people bring, I live for my headphones and putting those on and piecing out for 5 minutes with like a meditation or music or something that just helps me get out of the space that I'm in. And so finding ways to bring in self-care throughout your day, if you do that, then when life happens, it doesn't knock you over quite as hard because you've already figured out bracketing ways to fill your well back up so you can give back out, if that makes sense. That's a great question. All right. Anyone else want to share? We have a few more minutes. I noticed that Amy says plan breaks throughout the day. 10 and 2 p.m. Take your 15-minute break to check on yourself. Yes, I mean, that is so great. That's, again, self-care. When we bracket in and put ourselves on the calendar for us first, then we're going to be able to just have so much more energy and time to give to others. Let's see. There are so many that I haven't got to here. Okay. Well, great. Well, Desiree, I believe you had a link. Do people need to fill out if they want to give back feedback, or they can just send me an email and give me feedback?
I already put it in the chat.
Oh, you put it in the chat. Okay. Perfect. Well, I threw some stuff in the chat too. I added in the video that we couldn't open if you wanted to watch that and share it with your team. And just some other, like a great TED Talk on boundaries and more tools and tips from Psychology Today, which is online. I just want to thank everyone for coming in today. It was so great to get your to just hear what you've learned and what you noticed. And we're going to have within this positive psychology series, our next one, Desiree, I believe, is next month.
Mm-hmm.
Compassion fatigue.
On
Yeah.
the
Heck yeah, compassion fatigue. So that's on the 11th, 10 a.m. And you can go to the website and register for that. And then in May, we're going to be focusing in on how to calm the threat response. And in June, it's happiness. So I hope you tune back in. And again, this is recorded, so you can rewatch this and share it with your team. And we'll get it on the website soon. So
Jen,
thanks again.
they couldn't find the link for the video in the chat. Would you mind
Okay.
putting it one more time?
Totally. You bet.
And thank you, everyone. We do appreciate that you attended today.